Good morning, everyone. On
Morning.
behalf of Prabha Khetan Foundation and Jhilmil America, I welcome you all this morning to launch a very important book by the noted journalist, veteran journalist, Mr. Prem Prakash ji. It's our pleasure to have Mr. Randhir Jaiswal ji, the Consulate General of India in New York, being with us. And we also acknowledge the support and help from GOPIO, a global organization of people of Indian origin. And we have the chairman of GOPIO, Mr. Thomas Abraham, with us. We also have the president of GOPIO Manhattan, Mr. Shivendra Sofat, among us. So just to give you a two-line introduction of Jhilmil, Jhilmil was started about 4 years back to bring good things about India to America. So we deal with almost everything that you can think of. We organize poetry events, we organize theater shows, we organize music concerts, we organize Indian dances, but also anything that is important about India and then the diaspora that needs to know about it, we love to bring. And in that respect, we are fortunate to team up with Prabha Khetan Foundation and bring this lecture under their Kitaab series. We have also done column series with them in which we bring different artists from different genres. With them, we have done several shows. And today actually happens to be the first show of Kitaab series in which we are bringing Mr. Prem Prakash ji, a veteran journalist from India who has written a very important book, and we are going to launch that. So with that, I would like to give a brief introduction of Mr. Prem Prakash ji and the two noted panelists that we have, and then of course, Mr. Randhir Jaiswal ji among us. So Mr. Prem Prakash ji is a veteran Indian journalist who has reported on major events in the Indian subcontinent from the 50s to the turn of the century. He has worked with foreign broadcasters like Gaumont Actuaries in finance and in France and in things in Germany, and he's worked on several news agencies in US who were the pioneers of their time. In 1957, he was part of a group that launched the news agency VIS News in London. He has covered some of the most important stories of post-independence India, including the 1962 Indo-China War. He was at the forefront of war coverage during the 1965 war against Pakistan, climbing Haji Pir with the Indian Army and covering the tank battles in the Sialkot sector, conducted by the General Rajendra Singh himself. Prem Prakash ji has interacted with every Prime Minister of India and interviewed many of them on camera. He is currently the chairman of ANI, India's premier multimedia news agency, which he also helped setting up. So I welcome you, Mr. Prem Prakash ji. It's our honor and we feel fortunate to have you among us. We also have Mr. Myron Belkind, and I'm hoping I'm pronouncing it correctly, who has known Prem Prakash ji since arriving in New Delhi in November 1966 at the start of a 4-decade career as an Associated Press foreign correspondence and bureau chief at New Delhi. He also worked in London and Tokyo. He's a lecturer in George Washington University School of Media and Public Affairs, where he has taught news writing and reporting for the past 16 years. He was president of the National Press Club in 2014, and in the 1970s was president of the Foreign Correspondents Association of South Asia in New Delhi. We also have Mr. Ben Edwards, who currently lives in Colorado, and he worked for ANI for a while in 1991 and 1992, and I believe that's where he met Mr. Prem Prakash. Then he moved on to the London School of Economics, where he worked, and then he moved to Tokyo and then to New York. And as I said, currently he lives in Colorado, and currently he happens to be in sunny Florida. He moved on to different jobs, and currently he's running a management consultancy in management and leadership. So here I welcome all three of you, and I'm going to try to bring them to the forefront. This is Mr. Prem Prakash ji, and here is Mr. Ben Edwards and Mr. Myron Benkind. And of course, not last but the least, I would welcome Mr. Randhir Jaiswal ji, our Consulate General of India in New York. Mr. Randhir Jaiswal ji is a career diplomat. He joined the Indian Foreign Services in 1998. In his over 2 decades of diplomatic career so far, he has served in Portugal, Cuba, South Africa, and at the Permanent Mission of India in New York. So this was the formal introduction of Shri Randhir Jaiswal ji. But more than that, I would like to say a personal word that he has been here for a very short time so far. But the impact that he has made in this short time is amazing. The way he has connected with the Indian community in such a short time, that is creditable. And we are thankful to him to give us the support in almost everything that we have asked him to do. I've been to several of the programs. He was invited and he very readily agreed. And even today, even though it's a Saturday, but he found time to be with us. So I welcome Shri Randhir Jaiswal ji. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
And, good morning to everyone. And I guess we are going to start with the formal thing first, for which we are here to launch the book. And I would request Mr. Randhir Jaiswal ji to do the formal launching of the book, and then say a few words about the book. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bhargav. So let's do the honors first. This is an honor to a very senior and respected journalist, Sri Prem Prakash ji. So here I have the honor to launch the book here in New York.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. A very warm namaste to all of you from the Indian Consulate, and good evening to those who have joined from India. First of all, I must convey my warmest wishes and greetings to most respected Sri Prem Prakash ji, Sri Anup Bhargav ji, to Prabha Kitaab Foundation, to Dr. Thomas of Gopio, to Mr. Myron Belkind, and Mr. Ben Edwards. It is a pleasure. I'm delighted that you have invited me to this book launch by a very senior and very accomplished journalist and a proud son of India. It is a delight, no doubt. It is an honor, no doubt. But what makes this participation for me very special, that he happens to be from the same college, Hindu college.
Oh, yeah.
So you left Hindu college in 1951, and I joined Hindu college in 1991.
Wow.
So going by the college connection, we are separated by 40 years. But those 40 years, given the kind of special bonds we enjoy wherever we are, sustains and nourishes our special relationship.
Yep, it does.
Let me tell you, I read the book. The book is very enriching, very thought-provoking. It tells us the twists and turns of the Indian nation building, takes us through all the important milestones of our country and all the not so important milestones as well. When I joined the Indian Foreign Service in 1998, we were given a long list of books, especially those focused on South Asia. We were told to read them so that we have a foundational understanding of India's external engagement and all that has happened since 1947 and even before. There are books on, one particular book which was mentioned in your memoir is one by Mr. D.R. Manrekar, The Guilty Men of 1962. There are books on Dhaka, there are books on Bangladesh, on South Asia, on Pakistan, Kashmir issue, Goa liberation, Pondicherry. All these are subjects that you mentioned in your book and quite vividly. To me, it appears that I should be recommending your book to any young foreign service officer because you've taken us all through the last 7 decades, through all that has happened in India, and it will be a perfect fit for our young diplomats joining the Indian Foreign Service to be updated with all that has happened on India's external front and also on the domestic front. The book, of course, has a flowing language. It is a reader's delight, I must say. The magic of your pen is as powerful, sir, as the capture of your camera. It is laced with personal anecdotes, which makes it that much more special. We can have an authoritative voice speak about a particular development in India, but the kind of personal story you bring, your personal experience on ground, being there in person, is something which makes your book very special, very unique. And while you talk about the political journey of India in the last 70 years, one thing which appeared to me that you have not kept your love, and not the least for food, aside. You talk of Nagori Halwa and Bedvi Aloo from Chandni Chowk. I am a lover of food, so I couldn't have spoken about the book without mentioning these two delicacies. And when one talks about Nagori Halwa, you come to know how deep one is into the culinary traditions of India. So thank you very much for that, making that special. Sir, as we see you, you are an institution. In the last 70 years or little more, you've achieved so much. I like the expression in your book. Towards the end, you say DIY, do it yourself. That is a very inspirational, catchy phrase, from which many of us get a lot of inspiration. With the Ministry of External Affairs, ANI, which you head today, we've had very close relations, very engaging relations as we carry out our functions all throughout the world, and we will continue to count on your support as we go forward. From the first chapter of the book, which starts from Chandni Chowk, the bylines of Chandni Chowk, to the last chapter of the book, where you end with quote from Frank Sinatra, we travel 70 years and a little more. A 20-year-old Mr. Prem Prakash and a 90-year-old Mr. Prem Prakash. But one thing which came to my mind reading the book was that there is a very deep sense of optimism, of youthfulness, of getting to doing things, of positive energy and positivity. And that is what it seems to me is very special about your life. You've done tremendous amount of things in the last, in your 70 years, over 70 years of career as a journalist. We will continue to seek and take inspiration from you. And I thank you for your excellent book, which I'm going to recommend to my youngsters and also to my two daughters who lived in various parts of the world, but yet have to soak the best and to know more of India what has happened in the past. So thank you very much. I look forward to a fascinating discussion today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Jaiswalji. That was very insightful, and things that you talked about, the halwai and all that brings water to our mouth. मुंह में पानी आ रहा है, जैसे हिंदी में कहा जाता है. तो वो तो हम लोग नहीं ला पा रहे हैं आपके साथ आज, लेकिन आज किताब के बारे में we are going to talk about the book. And as I mentioned, we have Mr. Myron Benkind with us, and then Mr. Ben Edwards with us. So I think we are going to have a rather informal discussion about the book. So I'm going to leave three of you, Mr. Prem Prakash ji, Mr. Myron Benkind, and Mr. Ben Edwards, and we can go in a pretty much free format. We can talk about the book. Both of us can tell us about what they see in the book, and then so in a very informal conversational style, I'll leave three of you to enrich us. Thank you.
Well,
Prem
Prem,
Prakash ji, would you like to? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yes, Byron, start.
well, Premji, first, it's an honor to be invited to help launch the U.S. edition of your book, Reporting India. On a personal note, as you know, we have known each other since 1966, 55 years ago, when I first arrived in New Delhi as a young foreign correspondent for the Associated Press. And so on behalf of myself, my family, and all your friends here, congratulations on the publication of your book on your 75 years in journalism. Speaking objectively and accurately, as good journalists should always do, this book is essential reading for historians, diplomats, and journalists, since you tell the history of all the major events of India since independence in 1947 through the eyes of your expertise as a journalist who went on to establish a very, very successful multimedia news agency, Asia News International. I thought I would just make this opening comment before we get into a Q&A. But thank you so much for all you've done for our profession.
Thank you, Mr. Myron. Mr. Ben Edwards.
Yeah, I wanted to start with my own acknowledgement to Premji. So I joined ANI right out of university when I was 21 in New Delhi in 1991. And this thing about my life being a DIY project, I wrote to Premji a few months ago and shared with him that that's really what he taught me, was that life owes you nothing, and the world owes you nothing, and you make of it what you do. And that served me tremendously well in my 15 years as a journalist, as a foreign correspondent, in my 15 years as a senior executive in large corporations in America, and now as an entrepreneur. And I'm fascinated by your book, Premji, and the weaving together of journalism and entrepreneurialism in your life. So I just wanted to start by saying thank you so much for getting me started in a wonderful way.
You're welcome.
Mr. Prem Prakash ji.
Thank you very much, Jaiswalji. Nice to know you are from Chota Bhai from Hindu College. Yeah, 40 years younger, right? Very nice. And thanks, Byron, for all your kind words. And also, Ben, it was a pleasure to have you start there with us. And I'm so glad that you've done so well. And Myron so has Byron. And whatever I've written is what I saw. So India has come a long way. India has come a long way. It has to go a long way too, but we are not done badly in the last 70 odd years. So that's the way it is. Now I leave you to ask me whatever you wish to. Myron?
Well, Prem, what struck me was how 4 generations of your family, starting with your father and continuing on to your grandson, Ishan, have been journalists. And for those students who will be seeing this show, this program today or in subsequent recordings, what is your message to students considering going into journalism at a time when it is recognized that innumerable newspapers and other publications have stopped publishing because of the loss of circulation and advertising since the advent of the internet? Is there a future in journalism? And how has ANI managed to survive during these economically difficult times in journalism?
Well, I would say mankind has always sought information. And that's where journalism begins. And giving information is the business of journalists. And so to that extent, there is always a future for journalists. I wouldn't say it's not there. It depends on the medium. The medium is changing. Medium is changing very fast. We now have so many websites which are paying the journalists pretty well as the newspapers may have done so. And they're being read and watched. I'm a bit concerned about social media. That's a different story altogether, because those social media guys are really not journalists. Each one who can put something on Twitter is a journalist. But otherwise, I would say that it will be successful. You must go into the field. You must go into the field and make sure that your sources are correct. And depending on what you do, if you're into editorial, yes, you can give your opinion. But if you are reporting, then stick to reporting. That's all I can tell the young journalists today. But there is future. I wouldn't say that there is no future for journalists. Yes, the medium may be changing very fast. I do not know how long would television itself last, and what kind of other things where we would deliver goods. ANI is now delivering its content to all kinds of organizations, to social media, to the websites, to newspapers. Well, in India, newspapers are still running very successfully. Yes, they are meeting competition from the television, but newspapers are still doing well. And also remember that in India, there's so many languages. So the language newspapers are also doing well. So to that extent, ANI is able to meet its ends. Present has been very difficult, particularly since COVID. But it's going on okay. Thank you.
Prem, I wanted to ask about your childhood and growing up, and when was it that you knew you wanted to become a journalist, and what was your dream for yourself?
Well, you see, my childhood, as I've described in the book, was spent in Chandni Chowk. That's what I remember. I was born in Rawalpindi, but I don't have very great memories of Rawalpindi. I was too small by the time my father moved to Delhi. He moved to Delhi in the in 30s when the recession was there. Although my father had built a cinema house, but everything was bad in during that recession, he told me. So he moved to Delhi to look for something else. And so my memories of childhood are all well described in the book. And Chandni Chowk was a great place, great place. And it still had the charm which the Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan left behind for it. It still had that charm. And the British dealt with it quite nicely too. As far as the rest is concerned, yes, coming to when did I decide to move towards journalism? Well, I went to Bombay. I was very actively involved in the student politics of the day. I went to Bombay as a delegate from Delhi at the launch of National Union of Students of India. When I came back, I had to write a report for the principal and I gave a complete report to the principal and the teachers. They all liked it very much, and I suddenly saw that, hey, I can write. So I think that's where, and also photography. I won many awards during the college days itself, Randirji. I don't know whether the Hindu college has photographic contests these days or not, but we used to have an all India contest too those days. And that's where I started bent into, took interest in journalism. And mind you, after 1947, the opportunities to do whatever you wanted were so much, so many, because the British were leaving India, and I do not know why they were in panic to leave India and leave their businesses. So many of the big industrialists you see in India today, they were born out of virtually nothing. They bought some of those plants and businesses of the British for a song or for free. So those opportunities were there, but then I decided to move on to journalism, and that's it. Why did
So,
anything else?
so Prem Prakash, if I can intercept and ask you, just give us a bird's eye view of your book, what the book is about, just so that all our audience can know about it, and then also if you can tell us where they can get a copy of the book, where it is available, and
Well, the book should be available on Amazon in the United States. That's
Okay,
what Penguin has told me, that it is available and people have bought it from there. Uh, they will soon have, I think they might already have a paperback edition also, which will be cheaper.
Okay.
Uh, as well as the book itself, as I've mentioned, I have also my memory of the last days of the British,
Okay.
how it was. I've mentioned about summer of 1946 in Delhi. What a deserted place it became, Randeep. Suddenly, not many Indians realized that we had a very large contingent of American troops in India during the war, because the British strength was not that much to defend India, and Indian army was all over the other place. There was Indian army here too, but the American troops were there in large numbers, and it was the American troops American army's presence that built all the runways and air bases in Northeast. Those air bases came very handy to us in 1962. For example, in 1962, when I went to cover the Chinese attack in Nefa, or what is Arunachal today, we were staying in Tezpur, and Tezpur Air Base airfield, which was an abundant airfield, was fully used. It became handy to Indian Air Force and to all of us. And then as you know, I covered all the prime ministers. I was accredited, and I've mentioned all that about my relationship with Panditji, and I received. I was very young, and he was very amused to see me on the day one, the lean, thin guy. And I became a household member almost there. Uh, he, the amount of work he did for India, leaving aside whatever mistakes may have happened in Tibet and so on, but the fact is, Nehru laid the foundation of today's India, whether it is in IITs or it is major heavy industries and things like that. He laid the foundation. Then we move on to Shastri Ji, and the decision taken by Shastri Ji when defending India in the 1965 war. That's the first time in history that India has gone into aggression. Ever. Never before. Because of Buddha or whatever, because we've been such a peaceful country, we have always defended it, but we have never gone across. We have had invaders come in from north, but we have not entered north ourselves, although we were there in many places. So that's it. And then you go on to all other prime ministers and see how India has emerged. And you will find that in the book how have how well we dealt with the situation that arose when Pakistan had its troubles in the elections of 1971 and East Pakistan. They wouldn't let Mujib take charge as prime minister, and the whole trouble started, and of Bangladesh's emergence. How well Mrs. Gandhi handled that situation.
Right.
So this, my feeling is that the book, as Myron has also mentioned, and so did Randeep ji, will give everybody at least a straight information. You can gather more information later on.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much. And Mr. Myron, if you have any questions, Mr. Ben, you can ask. Otherwise, we're going to go to the audience to ask, but please go ahead.
Premji, I have to tell you, and my wife will verify this, I have read your book twice. First, when you sent me an early copy from India before it was available in the United States, and that was back in the end of December. And then I read it again this week to get ready for today's program. Again, being objective, it is a great read and a reread of everything that you can imagine from your life and through India's history. I wanted to, since we're launching the US edition, your book, of course, covers the highs and lows of the relationship between the United States and India, including, dare I say, former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger's famous tilt toward Pakistan during the India-Pakistan War in 1971. And so to bring us to 2021, if I might ask, what is your view or what is India's view of the new Biden administration? And of course, with Kamala Harris, the proud daughter of an Indian mother, being the first vice president who is Indian American.
Well, India's relations, as you and I know, with US have been always up and down, up and down. And but India's relations with US at the moment are pretty good. The two countries have moved into strategic relationship in defense, which is very important because, as you know, the Chinese are expanding in Pacific and elsewhere, and Indian Army is strong. It's not what happened in 1962. Indian Army is one of the major armies in the world. Yes, Biden administration is being looked at, hopefully, I will say that, by the people of India, although strange it may look to you Americans, but Modi's relations with Trump were very good. Yeah, and but Biden is looked at with hopefully friendship, and I do hope that the relationship will grow further.
Prem, I have a question for you. Yes, the book is a wonderful read and a wonderful account of a first-hand account, right, of the history of modern India, and that's great. Also, one of the things I took away from it was, to me, it was also an account of the television news industry and how that has changed and evolved over the course of this time, from how you were rushing to the airport to beat your competitors to get the film on the plane, to the age of satellite and how you competed and bettered your rivals in the age of satellite, to the innovations you guys drove in 3G technology and mobile technology. How do you think of the impact of technology on your profession?
Oh, far too much, far too much.
Mm.
You see, now you have to virtually, excuse me, edit, finish your story, because it's all going live.
Yeah.
It's all going live. It's no longer that you did a story, wrote a story, excuse me, edited it, and then put it out. Now there's no time. The channels, everybody wants it live. So you journalists have to be very smart and ensure that as they cover life, they don't miss anything. Technology has made it that fast. That's the way it is.
Yeah.
Great.
And no,
Sounds like, yeah.
everybody wants live coverage. Everybody wants live coverage.
Sounds like you feel something's been lost there.
Yeah. Yes, because, excuse me, you can't work on it. You can't really give the reader or the viewer, it is left to the anchor. No. As far as the agency is concerned, it pushes the material live, other than in-depth stories.
Hmm.
Thank you so much.
Prem, on a
Everybody's quiet.
personal, Prem, you vividly describe the close danger you face reporting from East Pakistan. You vividly described the close dangers you faced reporting from East Pakistan at the start of the strife in March of 1971. Hard to imagine 50 years ago that led to the birth of Bangladesh, including filming historical footage marking the announcement of the provisional government of Bangladesh. You also described dangers you faced in Afghanistan. You covered other events, wars where you faced further dangers. Prem, what propelled you to risk your life on so many occasions in the pursuit of good journalism? And what advice do you have for younger journalists about facing such risks that could take their lives? And I know you knew many colleagues who sadly passed away in the line of duty.
Yes. Myron, Tony White, who was the first editor of Viz News, once told me, Prem, whatever you do, ensure you are careful, because a dead Prem Prakash will be of no use to us.
Hmm.
That was very candid. But the fact is, when I arrived in Calcutta, I took train journey from Delhi. Normally I would fly. The reason I took train journey was I wanted to, on the train, think how on earth I would be covering East Pakistan. Myself and my colleague Durgada Chatterjee, we would go to Benapole, which was the border. And of course, we covered border events and so on. But that's not what's inside East Pakistan. So there was no way out other than take the risk of going in if you had to report. You see, a reporter who is only writing can sit in Calcutta, get information, quote that source, and write. But one who has got to show visuals, you can't. And more so because, for example, when I went to Jessore, that was my first foray into East Pakistan, which I mentioned in the book. And I reached there, I saw all those dead bodies. On the left, there was a barricade. I drove on. When I came back from Jessore, I'm cutting it short because you can read it in the book. There was a military officer at the border, along with the police who were waiting there, and they asked me where I had been. I told them I had been to Jessore. This guy laughed at me. I said, what do you mean, why are you laughing? He said, I've done it. He said, oh, you've done that? I said, yes. When I explained to him the barricade, he said, you've been lucky, they must be busy in Damas. Otherwise, they would have shot at you. That was the barricade by the Pakistan army. on another occasion, when I was going to Khulna, I arrived in Khulna, and the local guy took us straight to the police station. You know what that meant. But as it happened, the head of police station was a Urdu-speaking person, and I could notice there that he was about to be killed by his Bengali juniors. So I left the place. They didn't touch me. And here I am before you, sit still alive and kicking. There was no way out. There was no way out. For example, climbing onto Haji Pir or going into the tank battle in or outside Sialkot. And General Sparrow himself was conducting us, the press party. Now we suddenly became sitting ducks for 4 Pakistani saber jets which appeared in the sky because General's tank was being escorted by 3 other tanks and a press party was in 3 jeeps. You can imagine this kind of crowd down below. So we all rushed out and got into the trenches. And for next 20 odd minutes, one thought, now I'm gone. Because each time each saber would come down and unleash its ammunition, you thought the bullet was coming for me or whatever. But lo and behold, I don't know what kind of Pakistan Air Force is, because these 4 sabers with at least 5 sitting tanks as sitting ducks, they couldn't hit one. The only person who was hit was the ADC of the general. He was hit in his leg. The poor fellow lost his leg later on, but that was all the casualty. So one gods above helped us survive. That's it. There was no way. You tell me, Myron. Was there any other way of reporting? No.
I like your comments that you could have a choice at the start of March 71 and April 71. You could sit in the Great Eastern Hotel in Calcutta, or you could do what you did and go out of Calcutta and to go in to then East Pakistan. What I teach my students is you have to be on the spot to report the news firsthand. And you have certainly shown all of us and future generations how you did it by example. And to pick up on what you said, we are so thankful that you are here today to tell us about it. On a lighter note, in my final question, I think those of us I'm 81, so a little bit younger. What is this? This is an obvious question, but we'd love the answer. What is your secret for staying so alert and doing so well as you approach your 90th birth milestone, which I think should be a national celebration in India on that date? And by the way, when is your 90th birthday?
18th of August.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, all I can say is live your life fully. Each day is a new day, and each day is new action. And I've done that all along. That's all I can say. I mean, yeah, sure enough. I go to the gym, I walk, I do whatever I can. But the main thing is read, and just live life fully. I enjoy my drink too, you know that.
Very good. Wonderful advice.
Thank you.
And all good wishes from all of us for many more years.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Myron. Thank you so much, Mr. Prem Prakashji. And Mr. Ben, if you don't have any questions, we'd like to go to the audience for a few minutes. And I already have one question from Dr. Sanjeev, whom I introduced as from India. And his question to you, Mr. Prem Prakashji, is: with a journalist insight, where do you see India after 10 years from now?
Well, India is moving ahead. And take, for example, see, we have come a long way, as I said, and we will go a long way further up. I remember in 1947, I think somewhere in 1949 or so, first women were employed in the telephone exchange. There were no women employed in telephone exchanges. There were hardly any women working. Today, the percentage of women working in India in all kinds of situations. There are two lady scientists who are leading India's moon mission. So all that shows you how far we have come from what it was in 1947. And that march is not slowed down. It's going ahead further and with speed. And I definitely see, I don't think India is now a developing country, it's a developed country. And I see India in a different position, in another, in a strong, very strong position in 10 years' time. Many people say that China has been ahead of us. Yes, because it was strange that a communist country adopted a capitalist economy and a capitalist country adopted Fabian socialism. If we had not adopted Fabian socialism, we could well have been well ahead of China already. I mean, we've done so well once the economy moved back to normal way. We will be very well ahead. You can assure Dr. Zamsar, who asked the question, that India is growing and it will grow further.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah, we have a question from Mr. Tirlok Malik, who is a Emmy-nominated filmmaker in New York. And he's asking, sir, does your personal opinion comes in conflict while reporting?
Why should it?
Your personal opinion, does it come into conflict? And if it does, how do you handle that?
No, as I said, answering a question from Myron earlier, duty of a journalist is to report facts. And as far as I'm concerned, because I was handling camera also, I had to report facts. The camera can't lie. Camera can't lie. And so your personal opinion may be whatever. For example, take my personal opinion on what happened in Punjab in 1984, or what happened in 96 riots in Delhi following Mrs. Gandhi's death in 84. But the fact is, these are there. My personal opinion, I have mentioned this to an extent in the book, in my comments, that whatever was done was wrong and shameful. It should have never happened. Similarly, as far as the emergency is concerned, there was no need to impose emergency. She was going into appeal before the Supreme Court anyway. The reason emergency was imposed was because the opposition leaders were just forcing all the time and gave a call, as I mentioned in the book, to the army and the civil service not to obey orders of an illegal government. In what way was it illegal government? If she was going into appeal, if the Supreme Court had said something about the government, different matter. All that the Allahabad court had said, and Supreme Court later confirmed it almost, was that her election was invalid. She could have continued for 6 months more as Prime Minister and then gone for a re-election or whatever.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Dr. Thomas Abraham, who is also the chairperson of GoPio, is asking your comments on 32 million Indians, diaspora, those who are living outside, I believe he means, those who are living outside of India, their contribution to emerging modern India.
The contribution of Indian diaspora is great. You cannot deny that today. Although I would dare to mention, it's not as great as the contribution made by the Chinese diaspora into the Chinese economy. Yes, Indian diaspora invests a lot in, because Indian banks pay pretty high interest into that, but the investments coming into industry or commerce, they are limited from the Indian diaspora. However, as I said, the Indian diaspora's contribution towards presenting India in a happy manner, that it's a nation of educated, hardworking people, because Indian diaspora abroad is very hardworking people. Each one of them, whether in Fiji, whether in America, whether in UK, wherever you are, you have risen by the sheer dint of your hard work in education.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I think with that, we are coming towards the end of the discussion. I have one question for you, Mr. Prem Prakash, and it's a general question from a common man's perspective. Since you yourself mentioned that how easy it has become to call yourself a journalist these days, in the days of social media, you hear so many different views, so many different sources. Earlier, where there used to be few reliable sources, you could figure out whom to believe, whom not to believe. In this world of social media, where you get news from literally hundreds of different sources, how would a common man distinguish between what is good, what is bad, whom to believe, whom not to believe? Any advice on that?
Social media is very tragic at the moment, as I see it personally, because the social media like Twitter and others, there is hardly any editorial control to verify whether whoever is mounting a bit of news, is it factual or not. The net result is, some months ago, Delhi had Hindu-Muslim riots. Why? Because of the social media. What was being put out there. Now, there's a lot of time the government is now being forced to talk to these people that there has to be some control, some way, some editorial control, not the control of the government or so on, but the truth should be there, not propaganda. So unfortunately, there is a huge misuse of social media.
Okay.
That is the unfortunate part. It's a misuse.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. And I think now we'll move on to the formal. Mr. Jaiswal, would you like to ask any question or any comments, final comments from your side? You're on mute right now.
Randirji?
Yeah, Prem Prakash, one thing which listening to the very fascinating discussion and also your book, that you have been so smart, I would say, in accepting change. From Viz News 1951, your journey to Mumbai, to Bombay, to Switzerland, to London, wherever, and then you, over the years, as a professional, you've accepted change and embraced change, and I think that has been your strength. I mean, it's not easy. There's so much of resistance to change, especially technological change. in organizations, among individuals. Even for us, there's a difference between what my children do and what I am able to do. But you seem to be the smartest of the lot, and you accepted change all along. And that, in my understanding, has been one of the reasons of your success.
You are very kind, Randir. You're very kind. The simple fact is, I changed with the time. I didn't. That change was virtually forced on me. I've enjoyed it. I have enjoyed it. For example, I have a back problem and a shoulder problem here. That was due to those heavy loaded cameras of that time. I've got them in my office. I wish I could show it to you here, but Myron would know about them and Ben would know. But today, the journalists carry a little tiny toy in their hand. And that works just as well as those heavy machines used to work, which have given me a lifelong problem with my back. And no, one had to, if you want to move ahead in any way of life, look at the change that has come into the Foreign Office too, in many ways. And there is, you can't escape. As technology changes, as way of thinking changes, all kinds of things change. And you have to move with time. If you don't understand that, then you get old very soon. You are stuck with the old times. It can't work. It can't work. So stay young.
And thank you again, once again. And now I'd like to, before we invite Prabha Khetan Foundation to give a formal vote of thanks, I'd like to invite, if anybody, Mr. Abraham Thomas or Mr. Shivinder ji, if they are here, I'd like to give a vote of thanks from our side before we go to Prabha Khetan Foundation. Mr. Dr. Abraham ji or Mr. Shivinder, are you there? Okay, I do not see them.
Right.
So let me thank Gopio from our side for their help in spreading the word and helping us in organizing this. And now I invite my personal thanks to Shri Randhir Jaiswal ji, the Consulate General, also Head of Chancery, Suman Singh ji. I thank her for making this happen and helping us, and Gopio and everybody else. And now I'd like to invite Mrs. Akriti Periwal ji from Prabha Khetan Foundation and to give a formal vote of thanks.
May I also say my thanks to Randir and all of you, to Ben and to Myron, and to yourself, sir, and thank you very much.
My pleasure. So Akriti ji is the honorary convener of Overseas Affairs for Prabha Khetan Foundation. Akriti ji, all yours. We are not able to hear you.
Where's
Your
Akriti?
volume, yeah. No, you muted yourself. I think you need to raise your volume, maybe.
Akriti is, I think, again on. Is she on?
No, she's not on mute, but we cannot hear you. So something is not right with the volume. Maybe you need to, or no, now you muted yours. Now you're unmuted, but we still can't hear you. Are you using a external speaker or you're not using the headphones?
Wireless.
Is there anyone else from Prabha Khetan Foundation who would like to say a formal vote of thanks? And if they are not there, then I guess
you do it.
Yeah,
maybe
yeah, she'll make it.
I have just recently joined this foundation, so maybe I can do the honor.
Oh, absolutely. Let's give 30 seconds more to Akriti ji if she can make it work.
Yeah.
No, you can't hear you. Okay, Ratna ji, you are welcome and thank you so much.
Okay, I would like to thank Mr. Prem Prakash ji for for the
Not
wonderful
audible.
his awesome experience and his journey, his life journey, and about the book. And we'll also like to thank Mr. Randir Jaiswal for taking out his valuable time from his busy schedule to help us launch his book. And I would like to thank Mr. Myron and Mr. Ben, who have known Prem Prakash since a long time, and they have shared their valuable experiences with him, with us, and for their interesting questions, which helped us in understanding and getting us a better insight into the book and into the life of Mr. Prem Prakash. And thank you, Anup ji, for being a wonderful host and organizing everything. So
Thank you. And let's give another last chance to Akriti, if she can make it work. You are
I
unmuted.
don't know if I'm audible now.
Oh, you are.
Yes, you're
Oh,
audible.
thank you. I just tried to connect with my headphones. Thank you so much. And my sincere apologies for that confusion. Sometimes technology also fails us. I would really like to extend my gratitude to Mr. Prem Prakash ji for not just this invigorating session, but also for penning his journey that generations can benefit from. After hearing his scintillating conversation, it's evident that Reporting India is a culmination of the many years of Mr. Prakash's service to the world, always covering the most impactful stories in Indian history. On behalf of Prabha Khaitan Foundation, I also extend my gratitude to Sri Randir Jaiswal ji, Consul General of India in New York, our esteemed panelists Myron Belkind and Ben Edwards. We would also like to thank our partners, Jill Mill, Indian Consulate in New York, and Gopio, without whom this event would not have been possible. Thank you all so much for being a fantastic audience. A very good day to all those in the US, and a very good night to our dear friends in India.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And yeah.
Anupji, I'm sorry.
Something?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you all.